So, welcome back to Deep Images. We are back with more crime films. With me tonight is Rhiannon Clark, my co host of the evening, and she will be discussing an amazing film with us. Go right ahead, ma'am.
All right. All right. Thank you for having me, Henry. This is
Thank
a
you for
great
being
show.
here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. The Land of Saints and Sinners, which is a 2003 movie. Robert Lorenz directed this movie, and he worked with Clint Eastwood. I think he produced films with Clint Eastwood. And so throughout this movie, there is a soundtrack, a sort of Western soundtrack,
Hmm.
kind of like sounds like Western, like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's set in the 70s, the Land of
70s.
Saints and Sinners.
Okay.
In the 70s, Ireland, around the time of the Troubles in the north of Ireland. And it's between Catholics and Protestants or whatever. The Montagues and the Capulets, you know. But
Well, the
yeah,
mountain, yeah, the Mountbattens and the whatever's, whoever the Irish
yeah,
IRA, crazy
the
times.
well the yeah the crazy times. And the thing is, um there probably wasn't there was a lot of nationalist anger for people who didn't want the in Ireland for Americans. Just a bit of history, that there was Ireland, and it was colonized by England, and there was a famine, and a lot of Irish people died in the famine. So, and a lot of English people came over and became landlords in Ireland, and they were nasty landlords, and they treated the Irish like dirt or whatever. And so that's why the 1916 rising happened. And then we managed to negotiate. The Irish people managed to negotiate after the 1916 rising. Um, we got most of Ireland, but there's about 6 counties up at the top of Ireland called the North of Ireland. And so there was basically a war between the Catholics and the Protestants. The Protestants, or the Orange men, and like it's kind of like the English settlers or whatever, the colonialists or the colonizers, who live up in Ireland, and then the Catholics, which are the Irish, sort of. That's the religion that was mainly prevalent in Ireland before the Protestants came. Um, that has settled down now. The fighting has settled down. There was a peace agreement.
Hmm.
But in the 70s, it was in the height of it. And IRA were kind of like a gang that they used to like set up uh, like bombs to blow up various pubs and meeting places of Protestants and things like that. And
Were
sometimes
they
civilians would get
targeting
hurt.
English people though more than Irish?
They were targeting English people, so you'd be afraid to have an English accent there.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Around that
And
time,
it's
yeah.
funny how times
Um,
have changed, and I won't get political too much. I'm sorry,
it's
but when
okay.
I was growing up, the IRA were called freedom fighters, though some people hated them. Now they would be called terrorists. So, my how the times have changed. So go ahead.
I know. I know that is a extremely astute, because it's extremely astute,
A great
Henry.
movie about that, which isn't really about that because it's a great groundbreaking love story, which I'm sure you've seen, The Crying
Mhm.
Game. Set
I've heard of it.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it.
So The
I
Crying
can't wait
Game
to
is
see
this
it.
crazy love story with this mid major twist, but it's set the whole backdrop is what we're talking about. So from the
Oh yeah,
Irish point of view, the main character's Irish. So
oh,
but
beautiful.
he doesn't want to be a terrorist. He has a line, which that's not good for him. But anyway, continue with your movie. I want to hear how this fits into that milieu.
Yeah, you were saying that they would be called freedom fighters now, but that's what I didn't like about this movie. It was basically a film about Ireland in the north of Ireland in the 70s, but the twist on it, the way that the IRA were being portrayed in this movie, it's like as if they're terrorists, and
Yeah.
they're kind of like made look like they're bad people or whatever. They're like they're terrible people. But that's not how it felt to the Irish people at the time. You know what I mean? Oh, like, you know what I mean? It was scary that they were planting bombs in bins or whatever. Of course it was, but the energy behind it was that they wanted Ireland for the Irish or
I
whatever. But
always saw them as
you
like
know,
the
things
Irish
happen.
Black Panthers, but um,
Yeah,
and in our in the crying game, the IRA is portrayed both ways. It's kind of like the audience decides. There's good people, there's evil people, and there's kind of people who are just there for the cause. But there's really one evil person who kind of personifies what you're describing. So I guess if you're watching it from an English point of view, you might root for the villain, who is definitely the villain of the movie. But you
yeah,
might go, hey, well, she that shows you they're all evil. It's like, well, no, not really.
yeah, yeah. I don't like that when the director kind of a movie gives you the idea of a bunch of characters and tells you who those people are. You know, I'd love if you kind. I love when
That's why we
you're
watch the
sort of
news,
like,
is to get that. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
yeah. No, but you come up with your own kind of vibe or your sense.
Yeah.
I just don't think it was it really depicted the vibe of Ireland in that time. And the head of the IRA dissonant group was a lady,
Hmm.
which is also another kind of shoehorned trope at the moment, like where women playing roles or characters um that they wouldn't normally play just so that we can have a powerful woman. They at that time women wouldn't have been that kind of character,
Okay.
but at the same time we see though, um, I'll I don't know. There's just I know it seems like I'm picking lots of holes in this movie. Do you know what I mean? But I think it's because I'm Irish and
Sure.
I'm from Dublin. You know what I mean? And so you're getting a sort of Irish person's perspective on a movie
I'd
made
love
by an
that.
American
Yeah,
person. You
sure.
know what I mean? It's kind of very different vibe. But the plot is so the we start off in Belfast City, and I'm actually convinced it's a place in Dublin that they shot it in Dublin, calling it Belfast because it looks like a place in Dublin that I know,
Okay.
a street in Dublin. Yeah, and like because I know Ireland like the back of my hand. You know what I mean?
So you're saying it's
You'll
Belfast
hear
doubling you're saying it's Belfast doubling as Dublin.
Yeah, well, that's what it kind of like.
Okay.
Yeah, looks at the start to me looks like a little bit, but but then yeah, so they planted a bomb. Basically, they planted a bomb outside of a pub, and little kids get harmed when this bomb is going off. So it shows you that like the sort of destruction that the IRA, like innocent people get killed in the fray of this bombing,
Mhm.
and it's really heartbreaking or whatever. And then they hightail it out of Belfast and they go to Donegal, which is stunning. Ireland is giving. The colour of Ireland, it's like so beautiful. Like the
Yeah, I've heard
coastline
that.
in Donegal, stunning. Yeah, really beautiful, beautiful place. And so they switch cars so that they don't get spotted or whatever, and they drive recklessly because they're criminals and they knock over the welcome sign coming into Donegal. So they're unruly,
Bunch of
unruly
hooligans.
characters. Basically, they're hooligans. Yeah, no good hooligans. Yeah, and yeah, the cast, the main IRA lady is played by she's played who's she played? Um, um, Oh yeah, Kerry Conadon. Kerry Conadon. She's in the Banshee of Inisherin, which is
Okay.
also a very new movie with Barry Gleeson in it. And there's a few Gleesons in this film as well. And I actually had to look up whether they were related to Barry Gleeson because
There's Gleason
there's
or
a few
Geeson?
Gleesons. Gleeson,
Like
Gleeson.
Brendan Gleeson, the actor.
Exactly. Oh, and he's the most famous Gleeson,
Are
yeah,
they all
of
related?
Ireland. They're not all related.
Okay.
There's Jack Gleeson, who was actually King Joffrey. He's in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, in Game of Thrones, he's in this movie,
Oh, okay.
in the
Okay.
Land of Famous Sinners. So,
Okay.
and he plays a funny character. He's cool. He's very funny, and
Hmm.
he plays a Dublin lad. So he's a bit of light entertainment in the movie. He's good.
He's a
He's
rainbow in
good.
the dark.
He is a rainbow in the dark. Yeah, exactly. In this Irish Western. So it's like criminal, but it's kind of got like Western vibes. So it leads you into the movie with the excitement of the music and the like large panning shots of Ireland. So it's sort of like drone shots of Ireland. So
Hmm.
like I instead of Ireland the Western being a desert, it's Ireland,
All
the
right.
green land,
Like green
that
fields,
that kind of vibe. Yeah,
hills. Yeah. Who is
beautiful.
I know you're getting to this, but who would you say is the protagonist in this? Like who are we supposed to
Okay,
sympathize in this within this struggle, or are we?
okay. Yes, we are. Liam Neeson.
Okay.
Liam Neeson. Yeah. He plays a guy called Finbar, and he is a man who's a hitman, and he wants to retire. He wants to retire. Um, he's working with Colin Meaney, who is Miles O'Brien
I know.
from Star Trek
DS9 is
Enterprise.
my favorite Star Trek by far. I love it. Great actor.
So yeah, yeah, awesome actor, amazing, and we're so proud of them because he's actually from Dublin, where I'm from.
Wow, I forgot that.
Yeah, he's from Dublin, so it's like I'm seeing a Dublin man in space. So
Maybe
yeah,
you'll
like a
meet him
little
one
kid.
day.
Oh yeah, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. Be great. Um, but yeah, so Colin Meaney, and then we have King Joffrey, the young lad, um, playing a hitman as well, and he's kind of looks real 70s, got proper 70s hair and a tash, and he's just really up for like killing people, and he's just I think he enjoys it a little too much, really, to be honest.
Right.
He enjoys killing. Oh, yeah. Um, and actually, he enjoys killing so much that actually amazing line. Uh, they're in the pub, and basically Finbar and Kevin, King Joffrey's character, Kevin, um, who's also a hitman. So Finbar, Liam Neeson is a hitman. Um, uh, Colin Meaney is a hitman, and so is Kevin, King Joffrey. They're the three little hitmen in the town, but they're all in this lovely, quaint little
Now, who did they
house.
work for? Do they work for the IRA or they work for organized crime?
I think they work for just organized crime. I
Okay.
don't think they're
Okay.
anything to do with the IRA. The IRA is a group is led by this lady
Okay.
who's
Okay.
who's really angry because the Protestants killed her father,
Okay.
and that's actually a really good point in the film because a lot of the killing in the north of Ireland was like, okay, a Protestant killed my dad, so I'm going to go out and kill Protestants now, and that is actually the cycle of violence in the
Hmm.
north of Ireland.
Yes.
It
When
was
you
like,
radicalize
when are
people.
we going to stop?
Right.
Yeah, like an eye for an eye till everybody is blind. When are we actually going to stop killing each other? You know, high five. Yeah. But yeah, I remember, yeah, Liam Neeson sees the King Joffrey character or whatever, Kevin is his name in the movie, that he enjoys killing a little bit too much. And he says, because he said he started laughing at the idea that he killed a young woman once. And he said that he was laughing at her crying or tears or whatever.
Hmm.
And Liam Neeson is kind of like a sort of he's like a righteous killer. Like he kills, all right, but he kills people he thinks deserve to die.
Yeah.
That's Liam Neeson's vibe in the movie,
Hmm.
and yeah, he said, "Killing is no joking matter to me. I'm done for good." He wants to be done for good. He says,
He does sound like a John Woo character.
yeah, but he says, but if I ever hear you laughing at someone else's dying tears, I'll beat you with my own man hands. So it's like hilarious, but freaking brilliant line.
Yeah. Well
But like,
deserved.
yeah, he's just like, I'm not in up for this. Do you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I can see that he's forming actually a romantic connection with the neighbor as well. And he wants to get into gardening. or whatever. He wants to get into, yeah, he thinks he might like hang up his gun and start gardening, and he comes to the next door neighbor and goes in for dinner, and it seems really hopeful for him that he's going to have some sort of a quality of life, and all of this jazz. But when the IRA come into town, and also there's a local guy in the community who ends up being a bit of a pedophile,
Oh,
and who, yeah, we find out that he's a pedophile and he's touching the young girl in the village. And then when Liam Neeson finds out that there's a pedophile in the village, of course he has to take him out. And then it turns out that the pedophile is actually the IRA gang leader woman's brother. So she's like, "You killed my brother."
oh my God.
Yeah. So that basically hell ensues, and there's a sort of like a shootout or whatever towards the end, and all of this jazz. But um, I loved the fact that the director employed actual Irish people for this cast.
Mm,
That's something I'm going to say. And because all of the colloquialisms in the movie were spot on, it was proper Irish speak. You want to hear real, authentic Irish speak. It's a good movie.
cool. Is the
Yeah,
director
when you
Irish himself, or
no, the director is an American, and I
okay?
think that that's why. But for Irish people watching the movie, there's some little bits in the movie that's a bit jarring. Like I think there's an African guy in the village or whatever. Authentically, in the 70s, there wasn't very many African people in Ireland at the time. Maybe in Dublin, but not in the north of Ireland. I think Phil Lynott
Phil Lynott. I was
is
about to mention
probably
Phil Lynott.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the only thing it was just the thing is as well, like because the African guy could play the fiddle and he could play it so well. He could play it like as if like he was like an Irish guy in his 50s, but he was a
Mm,
young man. So that just I was like, that doesn't make sense. But like, you know what I mean? And like I think there was a lot of themes going on, and I didn't know if all the themes necessarily needed to be touched upon
gotcha.
because they felt like they were kind of playing upon current themes in a 70s movie. It's like
Mm.
either do a period piece or don't.
Like they're trying to relate something that happened later to that period.
That's all I'm saying. I just like, I mean, my dad actually taught a man from Angola to play the guitar. And so his name was Tambu, and he used
Mm,
to come to my house and he would teach, my dad would teach an African man how to play guitar, and all of his family were killed in Angola.
oh
So
my God.
basically, I know it was heartbreaking. So my dad tried to get him asylum and like went around getting signatures so that he could stay in the country. The
Wow.
kind of guy my dad was.
Hmm.
So like I mean, I love the theme, but I don't know if I felt like the theme was shoehorned a little bit into the IRA type thing as well. Like, pick a theme, bruh.
Do you feel like maybe since it's an American director and he really wanted to be authentic, that maybe he wanted to fit in too many things that Irish people could relate to, and maybe they didn't all work together all the time? That's what I'm getting more
Yeah,
I'm
that's all it
saying.
is. That's all it is, really.
Okay.
But it was
Good
a really great
intentions,
fun
but
movie.
yeah,
Good intention, but great fun movie, Western style. You really get into it. I want you to enjoy the movie, guys. So I didn't give too much away about it, but at the same time, just yeah, that was just my feeling and my impression. Yeah,
very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I have yet to see that one, so I am going to have
yeah,
to
yeah,
bask in your knowledge until I have a chance to experience it. But you very well
yeah. You'll
said.
see what I mean. You'll see what I mean when you
Yeah.
watch it, and having Irish insight will make it even more interesting, I
Yeah. And
guess.
then I'll start playing. The boys are back in town. Oh, before I go any further, before we get into it, let me just say this, and we may say it again. If you get a chance, please like and subscribe. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. The algorithms are really rough, and we're swimming against them. So could use any help that you're willing to give us, and we'll be glad to repay you with the best content we possibly can. So let's get into it. So my second selection of the recent sessions here is Pale Flower. Japanese film. Japanese name is Kawaiata Hana, and which actually means closer to like withered flower, like something that's on the dim or waning, but pale. Sometimes that can, uh, can apply, but it's had other meanings read into it because of its iconic character, which I'll get to in a minute. Not the protagonist, but there's an iconic character in it. Um, so it's a Japanese film noir. It's very much a film noir. 1964. It's black and white. Some of the most beautiful, amazing black and white photography you can absolutely imagine. It's kind of like what I got going on here, only a lot better. But where you got just the pure blacks, and then like the lights just where you want them, the grays just where you want them, and it's very striking. The almost every shot looks like an expressionist painting. And this was directed by Masahiro Shinoda, and Shinoda was kind of on his way up at this time. He basically became part of what became known as the Japanese New Wave. He's not as well known to this day and mentioned as often as, say, Nagisima Oshima, who did In the Realm of the Senses, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Oshima broke more of an international level, or Shohei Imamura, who did, or Imamura, who did Vengeance is Mine, and the one about Hiroshima, Black Rain, which actually was kind of a big art house thing over here in the late 80s. But Shinoda was also a visionary. And he was doing the stuff with crime films a few years before somebody we talked about on a session that the two of us were in recently on Branded to Kill, which was a little later in the 60s by Suzuki or Suzuki. If you want to, if you want to talk like the motorcycle or whatever, but they say it's Suzuki. But Seijun Suzuki with Branded to Kill kind of did the same thing. He kind of broke up in a lot of these conventions and made absurdist. This one's not absurdist. It is a bit a little surreal at times. It's just basically very nihilistic, but also has a lot of energy. It's like it's got a lot of the encompasses a lot of the high notes and low notes of the 60s, that creative period in Japan, and how Japan was being westernized in the 60s by pop culture. So it starts, it's got a hard-boiled guy named Meraki. He's the main character, and I want to credit everybody accurately. Ryo Ikibe, he is the actor. He was already in his mid 40s. He had done a bunch of movies where he was kind of like the stolid lead or the crime guy, the criminal, the anti-hero, whatever. But he never quite, he was at a certain level. So this became his plateau up to, becoming iconic in his own right. It's his co-star we'll get to, who's like become super iconic. But Mr. Akibe as Meraki. Meraki's, it's a basic setup. He just got out of prison. He did a hit for somebody. And, what I've noticed in these Yakuza movies is that, these people, I don't know if this is true of real life in Japan. It might be, because their criminal sentences were always lighter than America's, say. They can kill somebody on a hit and be in prison like 3 years, and then they're out again. And then and I'm like, damn, how can you get to do that in America? But in America, you'd either get off wrongly or you'd be in like 50 years.
For ages. Yeah.
But so this cat, he talks to his old boss. He doesn't really have any plans to like get into it, but he's not trying to go straight either. He's just kind of just drifting along, and he meets his ex-lover, Shinko, and they have some mad, passionate sex, which it wasn't very erotic. It was mostly dark. That's what's interesting about it. Just the way it was lit. It was like we're not supposed to see this.
It was a suggestion.
Yeah. Suggestion. Oh no, it was more than a suggestion based on the movements. But yeah, okay. Yeah, it was definitely. Okay. We're not really seeing the juicy parts. And she's going to be a kind of a supporting character, a key character, but not a on screen presence very much. But it's basically like that's part of his old life, and He doesn't really want her to stay with him. There's a guy she works with who's kind of a nerd who keeps asking her to marry him. And Meraki's like, I got no future, man. And you should marry this guy. He's got good prospects, as they say in America. He didn't say this. I'm saying that. I'm paraphrasing him, paraphrasing Americans. And she's like, but no, I love you, and she's like just desolate. She's like one of these people who's just, women, and a lot of women are like this in these kind of films. That like you do have a ton of femme fatales and girl boss kind of characters in Japanese films going way back, but you also do have a lot of the clingy old school, like I'm going to stand by my man no matter what, even if it kills me. Which these are also archetypes. Everything I just mentioned were
There
also
all are.
used in American film noir, but in American film noir, there were no girl boss characters. There were femme fatales, but there were no women who kicked ass. That phenomenon in film began in Asia, not in the West. And I'm always psyched by learning even more of how incredible it was, about how little we knew about it until the age of mass information. We either weren't alive or weren't old enough, didn't get the media to experience it while it was happening. And I would just love to go back in
Oh,
time and feel that and experience that. And that's what I do when I watch these films. It's like there's another culture, there's another world. It was breaking down barriers, some of which
they are time machines, aren't they?
are,
They're time machine
yes.
movies. They really are.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like entering a dream and you're really loving it, like a lucid dream. And
Beautiful.
this movie just has a lot of mood and atmosphere. The soundtrack's done by Takamitsu. Was this first? I always forget his first name. I think it's Toro. Um, Takamitsu did a ton of film soundtracks. He did a ton of works. I mean, on that Wikipedia, just his works that he scored for like performance or theater or experimental, modern, classical. The list is like this long. But he also did a ton of soundtracks. Some of them became popular, not only popular, not like Morricone in Italy, but were known, like Ron. I believe he did Ron with Kurosawa. That's probably one of his more heard ones. But I've covered one movie on the show, Face of Another, where he just did an amazing Music Concrete soundtracks. He was doing the Music Concrete stuff really early, really around the same time as you had like John Cage and even before some people like Steve Reich, and these, though they were more electronic, but just the whole, it's stuff that would not sound out of place in a Throbbing Gristle or a Nine Sturzen Neubauten album 20 years later. That's what I'm getting at, is like found sounds and noises and rhythms, interspersed with like trumpets and piano. It's all atmosphere, just
Very
like a
nice.
good thriller should be, but it's also very abstract. It's also like, whoa. I guess the most famous one he did back in the day was he scored Woman in the Dunes, which was a very strange movie, but it became an international art house hit in 1966. Again, I didn't hear about it when I was a kid. It's not like my mom worked in a movie theater. It's not like they screened Women in the Dunes here in North Carolina, but it was big. And so his music became exposed, and it has an effect on that film. So some directors who did more avant-garde stuff wanted wanted him to score their films. He was their first choice. So that adds a lot to this. So the story was written by this cat named the original plot was Shintaro Ishihara, who was a perennial for the studio Shochiku, who made this, and but Masaru Baba wrote the actual script. Masaru Baba wanted the script to be fairly cohesive about this guy's journey from getting out of prison to um, trying to stay out of trouble, basically being kind of feeling like he's giving up on life, not suicidal. It's very deeply existentialist. So there's a lot of him, in angst and pondering and hard, he's also got that hard edge where he doesn't want to admit his feelings, but you can tell they're like, about to overflow. He has to be stoic, but um and Baba wanted his story to kind of propel towards the realization that this character Meraki's never going to be able to go straight, and he's just going to be like, whatever, prison's my destiny. Well, all of that's in the movie, but there's one major thing, and I think this element was in Ishihara's original outline, but Shinoda, the director, wanted to really play this up, and it's because they cast uh, as his opposite character. Uh, they cast, what is her name? I want to get all her names right. Um, da 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 da. Okay, the actress is Mariko Kaga, and she had been in one of Shinoda's movies a couple years before called, I think it's the Tears on the Tiger's Mane is what it translates as, and it got some attention and got her some attention. Now she did that a couple of years before this. Then he got her for this movie. She's only 19 in this movie, so she was like 17 when she did the other one. I have not seen the other one. I don't know how to get a hold of it, but I'd love to see it. Um, so this is only like her second film. Very young, and of course, like I said, the leading guy's 45. Of course, in those days, and in you know cultures where there's like arranged marriages and stuff, a 25-year age difference is nothing. It's modern American puritanism that has made it a nightmare. But but yeah, so it's kind of interesting. But that makes it sound like he's having a 45-year-old guy's having sex with a 19-year-old. Well, that's not exactly really what happens. It is kind of a romance, but it's oblique. It's kind of like tragic. It's kind of like it can never be, and
Bad, yeah.
that makes it poignant, poignancy in the middle of all this, like, hard, tough, crime. So, but she is a trip. She's way more out than he is, and her character, they spell the name Saeko, but very appropriately you pronounce that psycho, and she is kind of a
Oh,
psycho. I don't know if that I don't know if the director got that at the time, or I don't know how much English he knew, but um, Psycho is, we don't know her last name, we don't know where she comes from, uh, but our man goes to this gambling den, and of course, gambling was very popular. You see it in a lot of Japanese movies, especially the crime movies, the yakuza movies. But it was thoroughly illegal, just like it is in America now, except in a couple of states. And but they played with these little cards called the funada or funada, and they were like these flower cards. They're these little square rectangles that you hold up vertically, and they have like little flower designs. So it's nothing like the aces and jokers and all those kind of that kind of taxonomy. It's a totally unique to them kind of symbolism of how what hand wins and what hand loses and all that stuff. So and they lay them down in a different way. And this movie got criticized actually because of the accuracy of how it was showing this,
yeah.
because they thought it was giving people ideas on how to gamble successfully. Now, movies, many Japanese crime movies after this, not many, but quite a few, did the same thing. But from what I read, this was the first one that showed it a lot of like really like close up, like, oh wow, okay, this is how you do it. Which
You're making me want to watch it more now.
that was, yeah, it was fascinating to
Oh, I'm
me,
joking.
but it
I'm
wasn't.
getting ideas now.
I just exactly. I just took it like it's part of the story, it's part of their culture. Um I didn't really pay attention to a lot of the ins and outs. I like gambling movies that are done well, but I don't really pay attention to the technical aspects, because I hate to say it, I've never stopped to really learn how to do any of that stuff. So I'm not against learning it, but since it's not part of my lexicon of skills, I just kind of take it for granted that I go with the story. There are some great
Yeah.
gambling crime
They know
movies.
how to gamble. Yeah.
Yes,
You're like, they know how to gamble. Yeah.
and this would be to me, the gambling film, the kind of hard-boiled gambling film is a subgenre of crime films. And my this is probably my favorite one, but my second favorite will be Sergio Martino's Gambling City from the 70s, which is just a masterpiece. It's not as much into the technical, and of course the Italian system is closer to the American or Western system. uh, but in this movie, what's really interesting is, so this young ingenue, and I can't stress this enough. Not everybody will agree with me aesthetically, though I know many will. This is one of the most stunningly beautiful women that's ever been born. And if you want to take beauty out of it, as in the eye of the beholder, she's one of the most distinctive faced Asian females I've ever seen. And that's a fact. That's not whether you like it or not, but I happen
Hmm.
to love it.
Striking. She sounds striking from your
Oh
description.
my god. And her they really, her character is basically, this is kind of the flip flop of a lot of stories. This is not a story of the woman who can't give up on the bad boy. This is the story of the stoic man who is fascinated by the free spirit of the bad girl. And of course, in his culture, his reasoning, he can't reach out to her and do what he wants to do with her or express himself, but he goes along with her for the ride. Like literally, she loves to drive fast cars late at night and drag race with other characters through the streets, and it's all black and it's just super wild angles. And um,
She's super fun.
she is fun, but there's a darkness in that fun. Like he
Oh, I know, yeah.
him being a gambler and also a criminal. He knows the limits of what will get you killed or send you to prison. He knows what to do and what not to do. Even when he breaks the rules, he knows the rules. She doesn't give a damn about the rules. I mean, like she knows how to gamble, but she keeps losing money, like large sums of money. But everyone likes her being there because she's the only woman. She's very attractive, and she has just a
She's a
weird.
vibe.
It's her vibe. Yes, she has a very. The camera loves her, and it's just very. And it's not depicted like all these Japanese guys leching over her. That surprised me. That is in some Japanese movies for sure. But
Beautiful. She sounds beautiful,
it's
like a
beautiful, and
goddess.
yeah, it's like
Beautiful,
everyone
yeah.
in the room wants to have sex with her, but they all are so in
Mm.
awe of and respect of her, they're not going to even try. Or plus, they think she's way out
Yeah.
of their league, which she is, and
Mhm.
and not just because of her looks, but because she is so wild. They don't know how wild she is, but our main character, he finds out pretty fast, and they just begin hanging out and they begin gambling together. Um, at one point, uh, there's a guy who keeps staring at her in the club, and he looks kind of psychotic, and Meraki's kind of looking at him, and immediately already you're like, he's jealous. And then like when they do the first game, Meraki hooks up one of his buddies, and the guy's like, you gonna you know give it I forgot how he puts it with the subtitles, but basically, like, are you gonna ask her out, you gonna take a shot? He's like, no, no, of course not. He's like, Mr. Cold, no.
Mm.
Meanwhile, he's like watching everything she does, but
Yeah.
watching so it doesn't look at all lecherous, just like watching it like, just studying something totally non-romantic, but that's where his head's probably at. And I liked that dichotomy a lot. And
That's cool.
that yearning dichotomy, that's a very strong dramatic strain that I particularly like. And I I write into my own stories. Um, but as the thing plays out, the guy who has kind of been there's two elements that throw off Meraki. One is that there's a knife wielding assailant that is stalking him that almost stabs him and gets away. And again, this is late at night, all the street lights are off, they're in some alleyway, and at times he's walking from gambling den to his house, which isn't super far away. He'll run into her, or they'll meet there and they'll drive, and then she'll drop him off there. Somebody is watching him, and at some point they try to stab him, and they're not successful, and he runs, and he sees Psycho, and they go into this little alcove, and they basically are stuck with having to kind of sleep there for the night. And they get somewhat undressed. He takes his shirt off, she's kind of takes her shirt up, but she's got underwear, and they get under the covers, and she's acting like they're little kids at a slumber party.
No,
And
that's cute.
what he's thinking the whole time. He's like, I just want to touch you. I just want to touch you.
Oh.
And here's what they do. Here's what their foreplay is. She's like, let's do a set. Just let's call it out. And so they call out their cards and their moves to each other as though you're playing chess without chess being here, which I thought was real. And
Okay.
that turns her on, but they don't have sex, but he's got to settle for that. So it's okay.
Yeah,
But it's a
that's
really,
cool. Very
yeah,
creative scene.
yes, the gambling thing analogy. And, but she becomes fascinated. The guy following her is this guy named Yoh, and he's a guy who had been in jail for killing two people. He's a notorious heroin addict, and they have a little talk about this cat, and He's like, is he following you? Is he bugging you? And he is the other guy that's been staring at them, but he's not the knife wielding stalker. Um, though at first, you're not sure. And always some trouble around the corner. But he asks her, what's the deal with this guy? And she's like, oh, he's a drug addict and he did heroin. And she's fascinated with it. Like she wants to talk about it. And he's like, old school. He's like, I hate drug addicts. She's like, why do you hate drug addicts? They're weak. They're cowards.
That's
And
how I feel.
and then she's like, well, she's like, but and this is where we get into the bad boy thing.
Yeah.
She says, living this life of just, I don't give a damn, of chaos. And he's like, yes, that's ridiculous. And she said, it's a way of living, like saying it's legitimate. How dare you criticize it? You just don't live that way. Basically, he just kind of hangs out with her and, tries to react to her. And it's really just, it's just, you can tell he just wants to be with her. He knows on some level that he'll never be a free spirit and he can never contain her or tie her down. But then that part of your brain that makes it a challenge makes it even more. And yes, I'm speaking from experience about this kind of thing, but they convey it so well that it's very resonant, no matter, even though it's a Japanese crime movie, it's just like what I went through with some wild women in college. It's just like the same exact emotions.
Yeah.
And drugs were a big part of that too. And that point I was very against drugs when I was brought up against this. So I was kind of like he was in this movie. And so he's got his old school honor, and finally they tell him, a couple of gangs are fused together. We're going to let you hang out with this kid named Rigi. Now, Rigi's a kid he had a beef with before he went to prison, and he fucked up. Rigi fucked him over. It's kind of like we were talking about Straight Time. But he's more forgiving because Rigi got punished by the boss. He had to cut one of his fingers off, and that was not unusual in Yakuza. So he's like, hey, can I still hang out with you? Do you forgive me for messing up? And he's like, yeah, I do. And it's kind of funny. And Rigi's like, do you forgive me for cutting off your finger? Rigi's like, yeah, it's cool. So they start hanging out. And this kid's obviously not cut out to be like a high level hitman or anything, but he's very helpful. He's very energetic. He's kind of like he's not comedy relief, but he's a tiny rainbow in the dark, from the other side for our main guy. He's kind of like a occasional sidekick, and becomes more of a sidekick toward the end, because they say there comes a point where there's an action made by a rival gang, the Imai gang, and the boss of the gang there in the Fanatas, he's like, we've got to hit Imai. We're going to take him out. Who wants to do it? And they're all sitting around. Everybody's kind of like, and then Rigi's like, I'll do it, boss. He like wants to do it, and he's like, he's not a hippie, but he has that kind of young 60s student kind of energy, but he's in the Yakuza. He's kind of a goofball, but he's probably because that's where he just ended up because of his upbringing. And they're like, no, it's too much for you. I mean, and so it's kind of there. And then lurking in the corner, Meraki's like, no, I'll do it. And they're like, you sure you want to do this? And that's when he first starts saying more or less, which he says more overtly toward the end, is, my destiny is prison anyway. So let me just do it. And I think one of the reasons, I'm just speculating here, I think one of the reasons that he does it is because he does love Psycho, and he knows that it's never going to be a relationship. So there's really not, and Shinko, he's just going to ruin her life. So, the relationships will really make you give up on a lot of things once they all go south. And that's kind of where he's at, but he knows crime, he knows prison. So it's a little more comfortable than trying to woo a wild woman. I mean, I know that sounds insane, but that's just kind of where his head's at. Most people would be like, I'd rather take
stability now.
Yeah.
He wants stability.
Yeah, he wants stability behind bars. And so he tries to find her to talk to her because he's getting ready to travel to Tokyo. They're in Yokohama, and Rigi's going to go with him. He's going to be like his little sidekick. and it's a little trip, and they're getting ready over a couple of days. He goes to Shinko, and he's like, just marry that guy. And he finds out that Shinko is the stalker, and Shinko was the one with the knife. And we'd already seen Shinko one time looking at Psycho from an alleyway, and that's when you kind of wondered, is that the same person that attacked him? And yes, it's been her the whole time. So it was like that's how clingy and codependently obsessed she is. She's like, who is this Psycho? What is this about? And the thing is, he's never even kissed Psycho. I mean, they act like bar buddies, drinking buddies, and that's, to her, Psycho, that might be all they are. Um, and so he really has nothing, but then he's also not committed to Chinko, so he really has nothing to hide or be ashamed of. But it's just that whole idea. She's like, "You're my man. You were my man before prison. You're still my man. I don't care if you're a criminal, and you ain't gonna go with another chick." And the more you know about her character, the more that, even though she's much more of a responsible, stable character in her lifestyle, she's just not appealing compared to Psycho. She's no fun. Psycho's fun, even though she's not. She's got this vibrant energy, and it's not just her beauty; it's just her, thing. And she giggles a lot, sometimes inappropriately, and sometimes it's just like, I
But
get it.
that's the woman. If you're in a relationship, that's the kind of woman that all women are like a little bit irritated by.
I know that's
Actually,
true. It is true. It is
so
someone.
yeah,
It is someone who you ask your boyfriend, do you like her? And it's like,
bit of a
usually we're like,
stereotype.
yeah, usually we're like, well, yeah, she's fun, she's hot, but I'm with you. It would never work out with us, I mean, and but then some guys will ruin their marriage to get with women like that. It just depends. I've always been the one and
Or
been
have babies with them.
oh God, yes, and your destiny's tied forever, and you end up on a Jerry Springer show. Well, he's dead now, but that Dr. Phil. But so he goes ahead and he decides to search for Psycho to say goodbye to her, because he thinks he's going to get killed, or at the very least arrested, when he does this. And he can't find her anywhere, and he's kind of frantic, but he's not super frantic like externally, but he's starting to like go everywhere, and he's like, have you seen her? What? And one person says, hey man, I heard she's hooked up with that guy Yo, the drug addict. And he's like, oh. And because he's trying to resist showing emotion, he's like, oh, you know and
Totally
so
crushed.
and so he finds her, and they talk, and he says, I'm going to be leaving. uh and he said, I heard you were you met this guy. And she's like, yeah, and apparently from what other people said, they actually did have sex, her and Rio. And but they don't go deep into that. He's more protective of her getting addicted to drugs, because he's had a nightmare. That's the surreal set piece of the movie. About halfway through the movie, he goes to this labyrinth with all this crazy lighting, and these angular windows and doors, like something out of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And then he finds this peephole, and he looks in this room, and it's this bedroom where Yo and Psycho are luxuriating half naked, and it's shot in negative image. And he injects her with the heroin, and he's like, no, and then he wakes up. So, but
Oh
that
God.
dream is how he really feels, but doesn't express, outwardly. So he tells her, I'm gonna split. And she's like, I did get high on heroin. She's like, I had a doctor friend, and he hooked me up. And she's like, I don't think I'm gonna do it again. He said, you shouldn't do it again. And she said, okay, then I won't. And then I'm like, wait,
Oh.
are we turning a corner here? And then
Yeah.
he says, I'm going to do the ultimate risk, because she's all about like pushing everything to limit. He's like, I'm going to do the ultimate risk. I'm going to kill a man. She's like, and she's actually shocked. She's like, you're going to kill a man. He's like, yes. And I want you to watch. I want you to get the thrill of this. I want you to see
Oh.
how far someone can go. And and it's not like he's going in a wild psychotic panic. He's a mellow, controlled hitman. He's a professional. So he goes to this. There's this cafe, and there's just all this classical music playing, and there's like a staircase, and Psycho and Rijo go up, and they go to where this thing's kind of like a balcony. and they can see what's happening on this other side where there's these people dining. And on that side, Meraki comes up to Emma, and Emma's like, you know, and they had told him, the boss had told him, he said, no guns. He said, do this close contact, you know. And so he grabs Emma, and Emma, you know, knows who he is, and he hates him. And he just, you know, you don't see it, but he starts stabbing him, and he keeps stabbing him. Some of it you do see, and there is some blood, you know. And he's like the guy staggering around in front of all these people eating dinner, and he's just like keeps stabbing him, you know, till he's dead. And wow. Again, he's very methodical, but he's kind of like working his whatever. And she is like, you know, like stunned like this, and then he just stands there, like he's just gonna wait to be arrested. And he looks up at her, and they meet eyes, and she nods, and he nods, and then she smiles. And then off he goes, and he's in prison for 2 years. And while he's in prison, you know, Rigi's doing well, Shinko's doing well, everybody's doing well without him. But he's in prison, and somebody says, hey man, you know, what was that girl that you used to hang out with, Psycho? And he's like, yeah, what about her? And he's like, what was she to you? He's like, just a client, you know, nothing. And lying through his teeth. And then the guy says, she's dead. And Yo killed her. You remember Yo? And he's like, yes.
Oh wow.
And he's just stands there, he's in profile, and he just doesn't say he can't say anything. He's not even trying to blow it off, but he's not showing any sadness either. And then the guy says, this is a weird twist. So if you haven't seen this movie, stop watching the video now, or you should have earlier. And but the guy goes, and you know what? It was a big scandal, and everybody basically means everybody in like the community, the gangs, and you know, Yokohama, that town. It's like it was a scandal, and you know what? We found out who Psycho really was, and you know who she really was. And then the guard interrupts them, and he's like, "Come on,
their child."
And he gets Meraki back, and Meraki lingers for a minute, and you're like, is he gonna tell the guy? Is the guy gonna go ahead and seize that second to tell him? But Meraki's body language is kind of like, don't say anything, I'm going. And so he goes, and then for the first time since the beginning, where he's narrating being out of prison, it's back to, you know, he narrates it, and he's like, she's dead. It doesn't matter who she was. He says, it doesn't matter. I will always love her. I will hunger for her even now. And I'm like, oh my God. So you finally get this like passion, like right at the end when it's too late. And that just makes it so much more, to me, like powerful. So,
oh wow.
You know, and the way she was acting toward him right before he killed the guy, even though when he went to prison, obviously she got with Yo, she was acting more like she cared about him, you know, than just somebody to hang out with.
Yeah.
But wasn't going to try to stop him from killing somebody because she wanted to experience seeing that, you know. So he like gave her a gift basically, but he didn't really get anything returned.
Creepy gift, but
yes, and he didn't get anything returned, but he did get closure in a sense because she's dead. So since she's dead, you know, that iconic face and personality is frozen in amber forever in his mind. Like he's like, I'll still reflect on her though she's dead. You know, I hunger for her still, you know, and it's like, this is just so passionate. So anyway, I loved this movie. Watch it, everybody. I have spoken. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this episode of Deep Images, and we'll be back soon. We have something we'd like to impart to you before we leave. And
we really appreciate you listening. We love your participation. We want to see your comments. We love when people get into what we're talking about. So like, subscribe, and share to your friends who you feel like will enjoy it as much as we do. So, thank you.
Right on. Thank you. Have a good evening.
And it's true that we cannot see that far behind. If we looked all the way in the past, we'd go blind. In the night, from the stars as they've all lived their lives. light that they gave as they burned and then died.